Scott Boras with us here, right here on A's Cast Live, the super agent. It is great to have you on the program again. How is life treating you?
Well, it's been a busy 3 or 4 months, but
Yes.
today pretty good. We're done with all of our arbitration cases and got a lot of the players signed. We have a few more left to do, but for the most part, Chris, we're pretty well done.
I got to think about your offseason. Beyond the craziness of Carlos Correa, you had an incredible offseason. Seeing your players down, we're down in San Diego for the winter meetings, and ever since then, everything that you've gotten done, you have to be real happy with the way everything's worked out for your players.
We're very blessed. We have just great players to work for. They're not only great athletes; they provide leadership. They're proven in the league, and they're very much franchise-faced players. Your Bogarts, your Correa, Nimmo, Rodon. We've had just a lot of major investments by teams and players that I think they know are well documented and proven and can really help them achieve their goals.
With a lot of these longer contracts for the big money, is this good for the game, showing that financially there's a lot of strength in our industry?
Well, we're revenue-wise, I think in 2000 we might have been at $3 billion. In 2010 we might have been at 8, and now we're approaching 13 to 14. There's estimates on that, but our industry's growing.
Yeah.
And so the franchise values have gone through the roof, as we can see, in all of sports. It's just good business and signing players, creating stars, finding leadership for young players to come in, examples. Those things I think are really critical to winning and what organizations are about. And so you're starting to see, with more playoff space, more teams, I believe, are in it and feel that once they get into the playoffs, they have a shot at achieving a goal that maybe they didn't have prior to those playoff additions. So I can see the competitiveness of and the need for veteran players and franchise players is more vast in the game.
Yeah, whenever we talk about expanding the playoffs, I mean, we're old enough to remember when the NFL playoffs were different, NHL, NBA. Remember March Madness wasn't as big as – I mean, never have we ever seen golf, tennis. Whenever you add, it's never hurt. How important is that? For me, I understand the business side of it, but also for our players, more guys getting a chance to try and do the ultimate thing, and that's win a World Series.
I think when you put a team together annually and all of a sudden you see it operate and function, particularly early on, players get an enthusiasm they would not otherwise have. It's no longer where only 3 or 4 teams really have a chance to win.
Yeah.
Now it's an opportunity where maybe going into it that over half the league has an opportunistic viewpoint, a perception of winning and getting to a point where they have an opportunity to do something that is – what the hope of the franchise is. We've seen wild card teams like Philadelphia get into the World Series, and I think it's great for sport. The NFL and the NBA, about half the teams are in the playoffs. Baseball, we're not quite there yet, but I think it's been great for leagues, great for fans, because it always, during a course of a season, you can have lulls and you can have peaks, and it allows you an opportunity to say, look, we still have optimism, even though we've had a rough period. Or we have reason to add players all the time. So that's what I think the game is about for people in their respective regions. It's about them feeling as though they are part of something that has something unforeseen, maybe something that was unattainable before is now a possibility. And I think that perspective really adds to attendance, interest, and advancement of the game.
And if a lot of our fans don't know, you've had a great relationship with David Forrest, even a better relationship all these years with Billy Beane and the Oakland Athletics. So as we joked, you're bringing Mount Fuji to the Bay Area. He wants to be called Fuji. Just why is he a great fit here?
Well, by the way, I always tell every fan, I knew Billy Beane when he could run. Billy Beane could run. So he really could. This guy was a great athlete. He really was.
Yeah.
But the dynamic of Shintaro is that he's got a big arm. He's always had a big arm. And the question was his command. And this year he developed a splitter. And by throwing the splitter in his arm slot, it allowed him to gain more command of his four-seam fastball. And by having those two pitches, he became dominant the last few months in Japan. And then I give credit to a few teams, particularly the A's, for scouting him. The minute that he was a free agent, they called us. And as I said in the press conference today, we've just had great success in this organization by, we bring Cole Irvin, we've brought Frankie Montas, we've had Caprillion come here from the Yankees. Every pitcher that we've brought over, we also represent Blackburn.
Yeah.
So every pitcher we brought over here has succeeded. So we kind of feel that this environment is a place for players that we believe are coming to and coming into themselves to really ramp up and develop in the major leagues.
How important is it for your players, your staff? Because the Coliseum is what it is. It was built in 1966. It's an old facility. We need to move out of there. We're trying to get the new ballpark here. But how important is it for you guys to see these offices, to see the spring training facilities, to know what this franchise can do beyond what a lot of people just see as the Coliseum?
For bringing players, truthfully, when you're a baseball player, I look at the grass here in the field. And remember, I grew up here.
Yeah.
And so the reality of it is, coming here was a privilege. I always loved the grass. I always loved the surface. The surface here is still very, very
still
good.
One of the best. Yeah.
They do have mounds and they do have home plates. And the question is the coaching staff, is the people going to advance the players that we have here? And that, for me, particularly in Shintaro's case, was a very important consideration and something we looked at. And so, there's a number of stadiums in Japan that are like the stadium here, and so consequently, the stadium here for them it's a major league stadium. It's a major league uniform. It's such a privilege for players to come over here and sign their first major league contract. It's just thrilling. And for him, the fit, the roster, the development history, we just really thought this was a great fit for Shintaro.
Going forward now, we always heard a player agrees to terms and then pending physical, and we never even thought twice about it until now. I don't know if you've ever seen this in your illustrious career. I don't know if you'll ever see it again. Obviously, it started here in San Francisco, on in New York, in Minnesota. Physicals, we've heard all these different things about there's different physicals based on how big your contract's going to be. Didn't even know that, if that's even true. Just take us through just the craziness. I know there's only so much you can talk about, but just the craziness. And I know it's probably something you've never seen before, what's happened with Carlos Correa.
I think the best thing you can do for a player on our end as a lawyer, and I've studied medicine as well, is you try to find doctors that have the greatest experience with the player. And for us, we had a doctor in Minnesota that had him for a full year. Yeah. We had the surgeon in Houston that did the surgery on him when he was 19. So we had historic doctors that were providing opinions. Teams can go to any practitioner they desire. And there is a philosophical difference of opinion in orthopedics. There's this pathology of, I'm going to look at the player's MRI, and I'm a medical surgeon. They're competent, and they look at the MRI. And there's a whole different course of it where orthopedists have learned over time, those MRIs are not in any way give you a predictability of the functionality of the athlete. And why is that? And it's because different athletes perform at different levels, even though they have MRIs that bring question. And we've had players that have had rotator cuff tears. Yeah. We've had players that, Mariano Rivera, or you can go back to Pedro Martinez, had a huge rotator cuff tear for the majority of his career. And so you have MRIs that don't show well. And I've had a number of clients that have had them, and yet they've had historic careers. So the one thing we try to tell teams is you must be with orthopedists that are functional evaluators, that they are in that corridor of really giving you the best predictability is functionality, clinical evaluation, and then the MRI. But when you're a surgeon and your team's expert is a surgeon and he's not dealing with the functionality of athletes day to day, particularly in the sport, and they have no history with the athlete, then they're going to give you an opinion that may be completely different. And this raises issues for ownership. It raises issues for the baseball ops division, everybody involved when you have a player like this. The hard part for us was that this was known. He had the surgery 9 years ago. He had 8 years of function in the major leagues. And the idea of it was that the teams were in this category. It comes up. And what it does is, frankly, it's market affecting, is that it now allows teams to come in and have a reason other than performance to offer less and get better deals.
That goes back to your lawyer side.
Yes.
You don't like that.
And the idea of it is, when you're doing that, is that you're saying this is subjective. There's no evidence. It's crystal ballish. It's all those things. And frankly, all we can do is that we try to do the preparatory workups. We give them the information. They have the medicals before they ever make the decision to negotiate. And then we try to hold them to the idea that you've taken care of this medical in advance. And the majority of the time, that's an effective approach. And we're completely thorough about what we do with the workups of every free agent we have. But you can see that when one opinion of one doctor, which ironically served both the Mets and the Giants, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But when you have one doctor do that, that's just his opinion. And yet I've got 5 doctors that say otherwise, which is why Minnesota did what they did.
Let's end on this. I think people need to know that when somebody signs with you, it's the legal, it's the medical, you have all your own data, but it's the fight that you have for your players and the trust that the players have in you to not only always, everybody just thinks it's about the best deal, but a lot of times too, it can be the right fit. Just talk about that commitment. And there's a reason why people want to sign with you, because you're truly after what's best for your player.
We're very different than most agencies. We have 140 people in our agency, and we only have like 90 major leaguers. And so consequently, we're very thorough. We're very selective about who we represent, but we also monitor those players from day one, and and my job is to make sure we're seeing players. I go see, Muncy in Modesto this year. I want to know how he's doing. You go all through and you're seeing all the players that you work with, and you go through. And we have a staff, we have a training staff. We're the only agency that has that. We have a medical division. And so we have all of these dynamics to share information. 95% of the time we're working with a team. We're working with their trainers. They're working with our trainers. We're sharing information. We're allowing the development of the player, the strength. We're off-season communication. We have sport fitness institutes in California and Florida. We're the only sports agency that has any of this. And the reason we do it is that we want to make sure the athlete has the best opportunity to take advantage of a skill. And we're constantly on them, talking to them about the risk of the game and what they have to do to be focused on the game. And so that there is no off-season for our players. There is a constant voice that's given them about what they need to do to get to be their optimal best. And I think teams appreciate that. They understand it. I think that's why the success rate of our players is so great, is because they're really given an insight to where, even though they're successful 1 year, that doesn't mean they're going to be successful for 10. And so we give them all the numbers, we educate them, and we try to do our best to work with the team. And I know that fans view that a lawyer negotiating a contract with a team for value, we're not on the same team then, but we are sharing information. But the rest of the time, we have the same common goal, and that is to have this be a long-standing, successful major leaguer. And for me, being a former player, I realized that, and I kind of built a company around it.
Well, it's the relationships, and you guys do a great job doing it. And that's why we love whenever we sign a Boras player, because we know we're going to be able to have a chance to have you on the show. You're second to none. You're the best in the business, and it's always an honor to have you on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. I always tell Billy he probably would have hit 270. He was with us. I'm just telling you.
You were no slouchable player, I hear, back in the day either.
Well, if I could run like Billy, maybe Billy could hit like me. I don't know. We'll see.
We always appreciate the time. The great Scott Boras.